The Twilight Saga, a series of four main romance fantasy novels written from the years 2005 to 2008, is one of the most successful franchises of the 2000s. On Stephanie Meyer's website, she details how in 2008, when all four books was published and the first movie was coming out, she was the highest-selling author of the year. Meyer sold over 29 million books in 2008 and then 26.5 million books the following year, ranking her the highest-selling author for 2009 as well. Overall, the Twilight series has sold over 100 million copies worldwide in many countries and many languages. All this information can be found at stephaniemeyer.com. I have a deep well of knowledge about the Twilight series as I have been an invested fan for more than 10 years now. It is easily my most watched movie and my most read book. When I first began getting legitimately invested in it, I did as much research as I could. This means that I am now qualified to educate you about how Twilight has a world of its own, sustained a wild amount of success, and has had a lasting effect on culture. To begin, let's discuss the unique world Stephanie Meyer built when creating Twilight. Starting with some overall context about the series, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn are about a young human girl named Bella who moves to be with her father in Forks, Washington. And while enrolled in the only high school there, she meets the Cullen family, a vampire clan that changes her life. So while the Twilight series primarily takes place in Forks, Washington from the years 2005 to 2008, a very rural setting in the United States, the unique world in question comes in with the vampires and werewolves. And on top of that, Meyer reimagines the traditional vampire werewolf myth. As an example, many vampires in most works burn in the sun. In Twilight, on the other hand, they sparkle in the sun. Vampires also don't have fangs, they don't fly or turn into bats, and they aren't killed by sticks in Twilight, amongst many other differences. Meyer also created a world in which vampires have inhuman strength, speed, and enhanced senses. But then on top of that, many individual vampires have special abilities. Really, and this is just a theory from Carlisle, one of the characters in the book, all vampires just have their human qualities turned to the max. So this manifests in the form of powers for some. In fact, here's a Twilight guide in which one can really explore those powers and the overall world of Twilight. So this page just details Edward and his life. It details his name, date of birth, date of transformation, source of transformation, place of origin, hair color, eye color, height, physical description, special abilities, he reads minds, education, hobbies, vehicles, family relationships, personal history, and famous quotes. It has some illustrations as well. So as you can see, a lot of consideration goes into this work of fiction. So on top of the four main books, there are a couple of other books to accompany them. I just got into a little bit of depth about one of them, though it's not part of the storyline. Some books that do pertain to the storyline are Midnight Sun, which is basically Twilight, but from Edward's point of view. There's Life and Death, which is with all the characters' genders swapped. There's The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, who is a very minor character in only one of the books. And then there's a couple of manga-inspired books out there. So another interesting thing about Twilight is its wild amount of success. I did touch on its success in the beginning, but just to expand upon that, here are a couple more things to consider. Twilight, while a controversial piece of media, was pretty widely received by many audiences all around the world. According to an article on ScreenRant.com titled How Much Each Twilight movie Made at the Box Office, on a budget of $37 million, the first Twilight movie installment grossed just shy of, quote, $70 million domestically just on its opening weekend, end quote. This contributed to their almost $193 million box office success and its $392 million, according to the University of Pittsburgh's Forbes and Filth, worldwide success, which is arguably less impressive next to its sophomore movie, New Moon, which was produced on a budget of $25 million and grossed $709 million worldwide. Again, this information can be found on Forbes and Filth under the title Twilight Changing the Business and Culture on Contemporary Film. So you can bet after a decade and some change, when Twilight becomes available every now and then on streaming services, it very often tends to make the top of those lists on those sites. And because it so often doesn't stay on those streaming sites for long, it seems like anytime it leaves or appears somewhere, an article is written about where to find it. And lastly, I'd like to get into the impact Twilight has had on cultures. If you go on forkswashington.org right now, a city-regulated website of all things Forks, there are tabs of frequently asked questions pertaining to things like how to pay one's water bill or who to call in case of an emergency. The last tab at the bottom of the page is, can me and my friends get a selfie with Chief Swan, who is Bella's dad in Twilight? I think this just goes to show the impact it's had on that small town of, according to datacommons.org, less than 4,000 people. Every September, there's a Twilight Festival, there's a Twilight Museum, and this is not to be confused with the Native to Twilight shop, all of which, quite naturally, are in Forks. This leads me to believe that Twilight has, on some level, stimulated Forks' economy, not to mention the Quileute Reservation. In terms of pop culture, Twilight has also stimulated a lot of controversy and discourse and opinions, good or bad. It's inspired misogyny in many, but also conversations about misogyny as well. It's inspired other authors to write books, such as E.L. James in the 50 Shades of Grey series. There are respected universities that have given Twilight the time of day to analyze through articles and courses its impact on culture and the lens of white womanhood in which it is told. All this is to say, Twilight has had a powerhouse at its peak and has still sustained many of the qualities that made it such today. It has had an undeniable impact since its publication, and it is an iconic piece of work in American literature and cinema. It's inspired lots of different feelings across the masses, and it is still talked about in reference today. And they've clearly, in their journey, reached the audience that was meant to find them. Hate them or love them, despite the series having been wrapped up, the story of Twilight lives on.